Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
For a couple of months now, since I started battling with depression and anxiety, I've been flicking my eyes to the corner of my room in response to a darting figure. I figured it was just the light playing tricks on me or something like that. However, last night at around 1 a.m. in the morning, I have a clock next to my bed. I was awoken as a shadow figure with a hate materialized from the cupboard door. I figured I was tired and sleepy and closed my eyes and reopened them. And it was still there. Upon that happening, it darted towards the door. I now know that I've had an experience with a shadow figure person. Does anyone else have any stories to share as well? Some quick research has shown me that a lot of people have reported the phenomena as well. Well, any stories? Also, any advice would be greatly appreciated.
I have seen the Hatman just once in my life. Actually, the memory in my head is very vivid. When I was a kid 3 or 4 years old, me and my family lived in a kind of small apartment. The entry to my room was confirmed by 2 bookcases. My bed was next to the other room's wall, and that wall had a window on the other side. We lived on the 4th floor, and that window was facing the street, so the lights were from down to up on the roof. At that age, I never liked sleeping alone in my room. That was one of the first times I've always slept alone in my room. I remember that, in the middle of the night, I just woke up, and when I turned my head, there he was, the Hatman, at the side of my bed looking at me. Of course, I was a little coward, so I just covered my eyes with the sheets. After a moment, I uncovered a little to see if he was still there. He wasn't. As I've said, the light of the street was always facing through my window to my room, so it couldn't be just a shadow.
Never seen the Hatman, but I see shadow people all the time in my house. Before sleep paralysis. I see them in my living room, in our guest bedroom, in the dining room, in the kitchen/yard, and around the attic. The former 3 all have had at least one individual die in them, while the latter 2 have always just creeped me out. Usually when I'm doing my nightly sweep before bed. They generally hang out for a bit, then disappear for weeks at a stretch only to show up randomly, and usually only in one room at a time. The most common trait is that they fill me with utter dread and horror so bad that moving right away isn't possible, but otherwise they aren't so bad. They have never actively tried to harm me or anyone else that I know of. They just sort of loiter randomly, and they usually go right away if asked to.
When I was 8, I always went over to my friend's house. His family was very Catholic, and they lived in what you could call a mini mansion. It wasn't really fancy, it was just large. Their family wasn't really wealthy either, but it was a nice house. One night when my family came to pick me up, I went to get my shoes to leave. We always kept our shoes on a landing between the 1st floor and the basement, because that's where the door is. Now a little backstory about the basement. I always got a creepy chill down my spine whenever we had to go down into the basement. I never went down at night, and even when I went in the day, I never went alone. I never knew why it freaked me out more than other dark places until that night. I went to grab my shoes. After I put them on, I got this weird chill and looked down the stairs into the basement. I will never forget what I saw. It was a hooded figure, much like the one in OP's picture, except skinnier and a closed hood. It had one eye, or at least only one I could see, and it was the darkest eye I've ever seen. I stared at it for about 3 seconds, and then it phased back into the wall. I was so terrified, but I couldn't scream. I ran back up shaking and told everyone what I saw. My friend's dad, thinking that it might be a robber, went down with a baseball bat and searched the basement. He found nothing, and everyone kinda just forgot about it. And so did I. We never talked about it again, but they decided to get the house blessed nonetheless. That image is still burned into my mind, and I will never forget what I saw.
I'm kinda in the same boat as you from time to time. I get really down, and no matter how much I sleep, I wake up feeling like crap. I start to have dreams that feel real, where a woman all in black is attached to me. I struggle to fight her off, and after I win, I start to sleep better and feel happier. I know it's probably just from lack of sleep, but sometimes I burn incense in my bedroom. I walk around the room with it. I speak out loud and say this is my bedroom. I wish to be alone/tell whatever it is to leave. I've even put salt across my door when the dreams get really bad. It seems to help. But 99% sure it's just my mind.
My peculiar experience with shadow entities. Roughly 8 to 10 years of age, living in a duplex with parents and older brother. Wake up late one night when parents aren't home. They're at neighbor's house. Brother is dead asleep in bed across the room, which is unusual for his sleeping behavior. Something inexplicably draws my attention to the open doorway of my bedroom. Down the hallway, random shifting darkness can be discerned. I think it's just my eyes having trouble adjusting, so I drop my focus just a bit, only for me to acutely refocus upon realizing distinguishable shapes manifesting from the dark. The darkness finally settles into its shape. 2 clear-cut silhouettes of what appeared to be humanoid figures. Very discernible, almost as if someone had drawn a perfect depiction of some random human, but just shaded it all in. I rub my eyes. I remember sometimes seeing these figures before in my childhood, but they usually dissipate upon rubbing my eyes. They're still there. I rub my eyes again, this time more vigorously. They're still there. They don't seem to notice me, or if they do, they don't care I can see them and are ignoring me. I got the expression that someone, some third party perhaps, knew I was watching them. There's 2 of them facing each other, their right sides facing my doorway down the hall. They're having a conversation with each other, it seems. I can make out distinct details for each figure. One I was immediately able to discern was some kind of jester of sorts. The other was less distinct, and was wearing what I could only describe as a hooded robe. The jester was standing on a little Roman column-based structure that my mum bought randomly one time from a garage sale. This put him a bit higher than the hooded figure. The hooded figure was simply standing on floor next to the jester, not bothering to lift his head to make eye contact. I couldn't make out a single word of the conversation. It was a very one-sided conversation, though. Conversation entirely consisted of the jester spouting off at the hooded figure, accompanied with all the gestures and tone of voice that one would imagine coming from a jester of such a nature. I got the distinct expressions this jester was giving the hooded one what I could only vaguely discern as instructions. Never once could understand a single lick of the conversation, except near the very end. The jester says, "Oh yes, and don't forget," and the rest fizzled out almost like static. Once their conversation ended, within a blink of my eye, the scene transitioned. The hooded figure was now standing on the column, and kneeling on the floor before was what I could only describe as a knightly or warrior-looking figure. The hooded man was moving his hand to and fro, almost as if he were communicating through a mixture of some strange sort of unknown sign language and verbal speech. This scene didn't carry on for as long before ending as well. Within a dark flash, I sat there in my bed, bewildered at what I saw, for at least a good 30 minutes. I normally would have gone to fetch my parents because I was scared shitless, but instead I succumbed to a strange type of indifference, then laid down my head and went back to sleep.
I had a girlfriend when I was back in high school. She would always say that she would feel things and see things. She was never specific because she said it would cause more things to happen to her. I'm not a skeptic. I have my fair share of experiences, but she would never tell me hers. Sometimes we would be talking or watching a movie, and she would just look at a certain spot of the room where she would gasp out of nowhere. She wouldn't tell me anything, but she would always have goosebumps after. Well, towards the end of the relationship, we would always fight. I would never raise my voice or put my hands on her, but she would always flip out. We are driving home one night. It had to have been about 1 a.m. and she was just going off, like crying hysterically and trying to pull the wheel while I was driving. So I had to pull over. We were in a neighborhood, but it was on the poorer side of town. I only had one streetlight and it was about 6 houses down. We were there in the car and she was still crying badly. Then she stopped out of nowhere and said, "Look, you made them mad." As I'm turning my head to look at her, out of the corner of my eye I see a shadow move outside behind her. While I'm looking at her, I see a shadow in the side view mirror, in the back of the car. Then I started seeing a load of shadows moving around the car, but I could never see one directly. I feel an immediate feeling of the worst dread of my life. I peel off, and all I see in my rearview mirror is a shadow standing under the streetlight light. I was driving her car, so I went to her house. I leave her in her car and she's just looking down in the passengers, looking down and grasping her head. I get in my car and jet. I haven't talked to her since. I'm 22 now. and I still get a mild feeling of dread whenever I tell the story.
Be me, B8, staying over at grandparents' house. Middle of nowhere. They were asleep at the other end of the house. Go to get a glass of water. Kitchen next to the room with TVS connected to cameras around the property. Don't ask, it's a long story. Look into that room. A figure of pure darkness sits in a chair no one ever sits in. I don't know why, but literally no one ever sits there. TVS go dark. To this day, I've never seen them turned off ever besides then. The dark figure turns towards me. TVS flash on and off. I back away, nearly in tears. So scared. Back to my room and under the covers till morning.
During the ages of 5 to 15, I lived in a mobile home. It was really nice, not trashy like the stereotypical trailers. Anyways, my bedroom was at the very end of the trailer, down a long, dark hallway. Every night I felt like someone was watching me while I rested, but I never saw anything. I eventually just got used to it, and weirdly I began to find comfort in the feeling that I wasn't alone. One night on my birthday, I had a group of friends stay the night. After partying as hard as a 12-year-old could, I decided to go to sleep. My friends all did the same, and we made a pallet in the living room. When I woke up in the morning, 2 of my friends were sitting upright, staring down the dark hallway. I asked them what was wrong, and then they told me. I remember the morbid tone of their voice so vividly. "Anon, did you see the man standing in your hallway last night? He went back into your room just a minute ago." A sense of dread overcame me when he said this. I still get that feeling today when I'm home alone. A year later, my little brother had a friend staying the night. My brother and his friend were playing video games in the living room when my dad walked in. My brother asked him about the man that lived in my room, and my dad said he had seen it just the other night. I was too scared to sleep in my room that night, so I, once again, slept on a pallet on the floor. Around midnight, I awoke to a horrible cry, like someone was dying. I sprung up from the ground and saw my brother's friend crying in the fetal position on my dad's chair. He didn't say a word. The look on his face said enough. I asked him what happened, and he just got up and left the trailer at 4 a.m. and ran home wailing. He came back over a month later and told me he saw a man come out of my room and attack him. He described it exactly like the hooded figure in the pic. The figure supposedly ran after him and choked him until I woke up. Then it just disappeared back to my room.
So I think there is something haunting my family going through my mom's line. My grandpa has seen him, my mom has seen him, and I've seen him multiple times. It's like a walking silhouette, male with a wide-brimmed hat. The first time I saw him, I was in elementary school alone in a hallway. I could tell someone was behind me, and there he was, just standing. He didn't seem aggressive or angry, just standing. Now, as you can imagine, as a third grader, I was terrified. I looked down the hall the other direction to call for an adult, but I couldn't see anyone, and when I looked back, he was gone. I never told anyone about it. There were maybe 3 times between that and my middle school years that I saw him in the corner of my eye. The most direct experience I had with him was in my junior year of high school. I was home alone after school and I was doing chores. When I was vacuuming the living room, I heard a whistle. The way a person whistles, it was 2 quick whistles. I turn and there he is at the other end of the room. The top quarter of his body peeking around the corner was his fingers wrapped around the corner, and I can feel that he's smiling. Of course, I can't see his face because it's like a silhouette, but I know he's smiling. He stays for a second and moves to the right very quickly. I'm shaken to the core and I can't move until I shake myself out of it. I can feel his smugness. It's like an aura through my whole house. I took 2 steps back and sat on my couch. I didn't know what to. All I could think to do was say, "You're not welcome here, stop messing with me." Very intimidating, I know. But I feel this smug aura shift into frustration, disappointment, and then nothing. The feeling is gone, but I'm still afraid. I sat on the couch trying to process it until my dad and brother came home, and I had to act like I didn't just see a shadow person. I've only seen him once since then, and it was a similar situation. I was visiting my mom out of state. Everyone had gone to bed and I was on the couch playing video games. The only lights on were the lamp next to me and the TV. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him peeking around the corner again. When I turned, he was gone. I said out loud, "I'm over this, leave me alone." I was frustrated. I could feel him become sad and then nothing again. The next day when my mom and I were driving to the store to get stuff for dinner, I talked to her about everything and she believed me 100%. and said she had seen shadow people too, and my grandpa had seen one once as well. I haven't seen him since then, and I'm okay with that. I don't know what he wanted with me, and I've always been curious, but never enough to even think of inviting it back into my life. I gotta go to work soon, but I'll post my story and check back tomorrow. I was in a band when I was younger. I took all my gear to a friend's house. There were 4 of us. We were practicing in his living room. The house was an old homestead house, over 100 years old, built by a railroad. I was facing an open door to a hallway. I clearly saw the shape of a man walking by the door. He was completely black like a shadow. I stopped playing, and so did everyone else. I asked if anyone else saw the man. They said yes. We looked down the hallway, which led to a bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and of course no one was in there. The guy in the band who lived there said the house was haunted. I saw another shadow person walking down the sidewalk behind my house. I only saw him for a second, and then he was gone. At the same house, I saw an old man pushing a dog in a baby stroller. I ran out to look, and as he walked by a bush, he disappeared. One other thing that happened there. I was outside late one night sitting on my back porch. Right beside my ear I hear, "How are you doing, my friend?" It was something similar to how my dead grandfather spoke. I was freaked out and looked around. I was over 100 feet from the road or sidewalk, but the voice wasn't yelling. It was a conversational voice, but no one was around. I think these things come about when a person is in a meditative state. Sensory input may be minimal or overloaded. Think white noise or silence. Both are capable of being molded by energetic patterns more easily than moderate amounts of sensory input, which our eyes and ears are designed for. When we see something out of our peripheral vision or hear a whisper, I relate that area of sight and sound to our subconscious. Our conscious is usually focused on the frequencies optimal to our survival. The subconscious can perceive frequencies above and below and filter them to our conscious in times of quietude. At least that's my theory.
Not sure if this would be a shadow person, but here it goes. Be it old job. It was a warehouse, but had a counter area that closed at 5 p.m. It was 9 p.m., lights off in the counter area. Decided to take a late night snack up there with a coworker. We kept the lights out because the light from the warehouse was enough to eat by, but very dim. For some reason, I decided to take a picture of the dimly lit area because, too spooky for me. Look at the picture after I took it. There appears to be a black mass with 2 red dots that I assume were eyes peeking around one of the shelves. Absolutely nothing there and no red lights that would reflect. Get a massive chill and feel weird for the rest of the night. Quit job for better job about a month later. A few months later, I was with my cousin and dad, and my cousin's car broke down along a dark country road. We pulled into a small parking area by an abandoned barn. While they looked at my cousin's car, I kept an eye out for coyotes. My dad's headlights were beaming into the barn. Once again, I decided to take a picture because it's spooky. I looked at the picture when I got home. Black mass standing right in the middle of the barn. Red dots that I assume were eyes. Sinking feeling in my stomach. Eventually, I forgot about it until just now.
I'll give a little tale of my first ever sleep paralysis encounter. I was in 2nd grade, and my sleep troubles were already starting. I would wake up every day at 2 or 3 a.m. and kind of stay in a state of half waking, half sleeping. One such day, I was watching Dragon Ball Z, but fell asleep with my face buried in the pillow. I had happened to have a stuffy nose that day, and I could not breathe correctly. Out of nowhere, in my sleep, I suddenly became aware. First thing I noticed was that I could move my eyes, but I was completely unable to move my body. But the most terrifying part was that I was unable to breathe. Since I had begun to panic, I was trying to hyperventilate, but I was unable to breathe enough air. I started looking around frantically, trying to see what was on top of me. It looked very human, but I could not see its face, for it was looking in the opposite direction. I didn't even have the ability to struggle. All I could do was look in awe and terror at the black mass atop me. After what felt like hours, in agonizing paralysis, I finally awoke. No one believed my story, but that may have been because I was only 7 or 8 years old. Turns out this is a very common sleep paralysis case, seeing a form sitting on top of you.
2 haunt my mum, I think, though I have no idea why. A horrible small old woman and a man. She sees both pretty frequently and has done for a very long time. As has my stepdad and grandmother, I've only ever seen the man once. Getting changed. Look down to put pants on. Eyes catch the mirror on the way up, a huge silhouette of a man standing behind me, jet black with a red/yellow/orange glowing outline. Just standing, no aggressive vibes. Turn around, nobody's there. Feel calm. I don't think he wanted me to fear him. I've felt the woman's presence many times through the years. She's so very bitter. But apart from grey wisps that may not even be her and some poltergeist activity, violently flapping cabinet doors, etc., I haven't actually seen her. Mum says she used to make noises in the night and wake me up when I was tiny, but I don't know. I do have other ghost stories involving that house, though. Has anyone ever heard anything like this before? Or have any reasons why they'd be haunting my mum? Or haunt anyone in particular, really? It's always been a huge mystery to me.
My very first experience was when I was about 14 years old. I was hanging out at my friend's house and we had just woken up from a sleepover. I was about to go home. When I was 14, my parents were separated and it was my mom's week to have me. My mom lived in a different neighborhood. My dad lived in the same neighborhood as my friend. I walked to my dad's house to get some sketchbooks that I had left at his house. I wanted to bring them to my mom's house. I went up to the side door of my dad's house to unlock the door, went inside, went up to my room, and grabbed my book. As I went down the stairs, I just got this sudden feeling of dread and sorrow. I was about 5 steps from the ground and I looked at the wall where the side door led outside. There was a window maybe 2 feet to the right of the door, but in between that was just a wall. But at that second I saw a huge black shadow move as if it were walking. It looked more like a reflection of someone walking on the other side of the kitchen, so I looked over and there was nothing there. I looked back at the wall. The shadow was just standing there. I sprinted out the door and locked it. I could never be in that house alone again. My second experience occurred at my mom's apartment when I was probably in 8th grade or so. This experience ties into 2 different things, so I'll give the whole story. When we were going to get the apartment, we wanted to know the history of the building because they told us we would have to wait a week to be able to go in. They had to repaint the whole apartment and lay new carpet down. Legally, you have to supply information on the history, but they refused to tell us why they had to change everything out. The building was not that old either. It was maybe 10 years old, a very nice apartment complex. So on that note, we moved into the apartment, and a few months later my mom was alone in the apartment when I was at my dad's house. She freaked out and told me. I was laying facing the bathroom and I opened my eyes and saw a little girl in a nightgown sitting on the edge of my bed. She got up and walked into my bathroom and disappeared. I'm so scared. I thought that was pretty freaky since she was alone. Then a few weeks later I was home with my brother after school and I was in his room talking to him, and went to go into my bedroom on the other side of the apartment. While I was walking through the hallway, I looked at one of the pictures hanging on the wall. You could see the reflection on the glass of the edge of my mom's bed. I only saw a quick glance of it since I was walking, but I saw a man in all black sitting on the edge of her bed. Then I walked backwards and looked at the picture frame again and saw him standing at the door. He was wearing an all-black tuxedo and had a blacked-out face with bright white eyes. I turned around very fast and nothing was there. I ran into my bedroom and didn't come out until my mom came home.
My ex-wife used to see them regularly. They'd loom over her, trying to grab her and pull her. She had her mental issues and was on a lot of pain meds too. We both have spinal injuries. I thought it was her mental issues. One night we were goofed up, swapping pain meds. I saw about 5 of them, freaked out as they reached for me, got myself calm and focused on them. They faded. A few nights later, when I was sober, they visited again. She was trying to sleep, goofed up as usual, but I was meditating and more prepared mentally. I laughed at them and focused my energy to my chest, visualizing it as a white light, growing out into the room whilst repeating the Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Om. I like it to help my focus. As I felt my energy rise, I looked at them again and loudly told them, leave, that this is not their plane. Something my mom taught me. They attempted to loom in closer but couldn't get to us and faded again. Unfortunately, she wouldn't put the effort into learning to meditate, focus here energy, and they kept coming more numerous and aggressive. I saw them a few times, but only when she was around and never since. They were always like shadows, elongated and really tall, like another poster said, a red/orange/yellow aura, and for me, just before the black was that electric purple-blue color I only ever see when I'm tripping. Despite being shadows, I could see their features like chins, and their hands move in front of their bodies, but no features yet. Both of us could tell they had sinister grins. They followed her from America to West Europe, where I live. Her grandmother used to see them, but her mother denied seeing them. Both her children saw them too, but only after about 6. I haven't spoken to her properly in years, but I doubt they've stopped following her. This thread really brought it back, how sinister and frightening they were, but learning to focus and enforce your reality against theirs was the key for me. By any chance, are any of you guys who are family haunted by these from southern states? She was from Mississippi, and it seems more common for people there.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.